What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with another CD collection update for you guys, except this time, this is probably going to be the last one I'm going to have for a while, because I went crazy on this one, and also, I need to start saving up for Christmas presents coming up. So I figured, what better way than now, or what better time than now to showcase the latest of my collection. And this is the biggest one yet, because, hopefully it doesn't slip, we got a massive pile, a massive stack of albums to showcase for you guys, because basically the backstory is, for those of you who saw my latest channel update video would know that I was on vacation in Toledo for a few days, and I found 3 record shops in Toledo, or in the suburbs of Toledo, and managed to come out with nearly 30 CDs. And plus I had a few left over from purchases I had made previous, so this is basically everything I've gotten since the last update video. So this might be a long video, but hey, I'm a glutton for punishment, and why not show you guys what all I have. So we're going to start from the top of the stack to the bottom, so it's going to be in reverse alphabetical order, so starting from Z to A. So we kick things off with Type O Negative, Slow, Deep, and Hard. Initially I had this album already as part of the Type O Negative Roadrunner collection, but I thought to myself, you know what, I want to get the albums individually, separately, to add more to the collection. So I gave that box set away in a recent Twitch giveaway I did, and now I'm going around trying to get the individual albums. So far I've already only gotten Bloody Kisses, and now the debut, Slow, Deep, and Hard. I mean, it's a very underrated album, especially even for Type O Negative fans, because this was where they got their start. And it was kind of featured some leftover Carnivore riffs as this album. It is gothic and doomy at times, but it's also very thrashy at times. So this is like gothic doom thrash combination that they were going for on this. But songs like Unsuccessfully Coping with the Natural Beauty of Infidelities, or Tolerance, Prelude to Agony, The Misinterpretation of Silence, Gravitational Constant. There's just some awesome songs, and a lot of that Peter Steele dark humor that we all loved when he was around. May he rest in peace, Peter Steele. But yeah, Slow, Deep, and Hard by Type O Negative. Followed next by, now I've been wanting to get this album, and eventually I'm going to get the debut at some point, but after hearing the tragic news of Eric Wagner passing away a couple of months ago, I saw this at one of the shops and thought to myself, you know what, I need to get this. Trouble the Skull. 1985, this is Trouble's sophomore effort, and this is the Hammerhard Records reissue that came out last year. This is amazing doom metal that has a lot of Christian lyrics, but it's Christian lyrics done right. It's mostly the somber, dark stories about Christianity. And, I mean, even inside the case, it says a verse. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you with all malice, and be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as God and Christ forgave you. And I believe in that motto. And this is an amazing album. I mean, the highlight for me is the opening track, Pray for the Dead. That's one of my favorite doom metal songs of all time. To me, this is like Trouble, early Trouble. It sounded like, because Eric Wagner's voice had some similarities to Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses, just a little bit. So it was like as if Axl Rose was singing over Black Sabbath. But this is a fantastic album. I hope to get Psalm 9, Run Into the Light, and the self-titled album at some point to complete the classic era of Trouble. But moving on to the next one, and I've been waiting to get this one for a long, long time. Trivium, Ember to Inferno, the debut album from one of my favorite bands of all time. I just did the review for the new album, In the Court of the Dragon, and it was a really good album, but I mean, I got Ember to Inferno here because, like, holy shit, for a debut effort from a band that were just members that were, like, teenagers. Matt Hafey was only, I think, like 16, 17 when they did this album, and I think it's a really damn good debut. I mean, like I always keep saying, like, people always want to put Trivium into the metalcore genre. I don't think that's 100% accurate just because they have the occasional breakdown or the sing scream style doesn't mean that they're quite metalcore. After all, to me, what defines metalcore is no guitar solos, and Trivium has guitar solos up the yin-yang. So to me, they were like an oddball mix of thrash, melodic death metal, and groove metal, kind of all in a blender, and this was the beginning of Trivium's career, and some raw, thrashy tunes like If I Could Collapse the Masses, Fugue, Requiem. The title track is a great tune. There's some awesome songs, some very underrated Trivium songs on here that doesn't get a whole lot of love in comparison to everything else they've done since, but Ember to Inferno by Trivium. Next up, this is an album that for some odd reason right now you can't really get it cheap anywhere. I don't know what the deal is. I guess maybe they just haven't had the time to get into making new versions of this album, but I managed to find it fairly cheap for like 16, 18 bucks on eBay, and it was in fantastic shape. And I thought to myself, well, I was missing this one from my collection. Fear Inoculum by Tool. Of course, I did the review for this album when it came out in 2019, and it got quite a bit mixed reviews among people. Like, I don't know why, just that when I did that review, it's like people just bombarded that video with random comments. People saying like, oh, it's Stockholm Syndrome or whatever. I don't give a shit. I actually really, really like this album. Not my favorite Tool album. I don't think anything for me would ever surpass Lateralis or Anima. This would be like neck and neck with 10,000 Days for like my third favorite Tool album, but I thought it was a really cool album. I mean, yeah, the songs are quite long, but it's prog metal. You gotta expect long songs somehow. And yeah, Fear Inoculum is mine now. Next up, we got an album that I've been missing for a while. Testament, Practice What You Preach. Now, this is like one of the few Testament albums that it's very divisive. Like, you got, especially on this one, you got people that think that this is a brilliant album, and you got people who say that this is an okay album. I think it's good. Like, half of the album's fantastic, and the other half's just kind of alright. But I mean, the title track is one of the best Testament songs. Envy Life, I really, really like. Greenhouse Effect, even though not a fan of the lyrics, way too preachy. The ballad, Nightmare Coming Back to You, there are some great songs on here. It's just not a great album. It's a good album, but it is essential for any fan of Testament, and I just had to get it. Which brings us to the next two are two albums from the same band. Now, I had these as a part of the Roadrunner 2 from the Vault set. I eventually gave that away in my last Twitch giveaway, and I got them separately now. First, we got Suffocation, Effigy of the Forgotten. I mean, what more can I say about this album that nobody else has said? I mean, it's one of the building blocks for brutal death metal, and even tech death to some extent. I mean, songs like Liege of Inveracity, the title track, Infecting the Crypt, Seeds of the Suffering. I mean, this is just death metal glory right here with Effigy of the Forgotten. And following that, we got Pierced from Within. This is the only version that was out there for fairly cheap, the Listenable Records version, but it's still got Roadrunner attached. But yeah, this is another fantastic album, and some people say that this is the best Suffocation album. I disagree. I think it's the second best. I'm really much more partial to Effigy personally, but yeah, Pierce from Within's fantastic in its own right too. The title track, Thrones of Blood, Depths of Depravity, Synthetically Revived, the re-recording of Breeding the Spawn. It's just, mwah, absolutely delicious. So now that brings us to actually the band that I have on my shirt right now, Power Trip. I finally got their debut album, Manifest Decimation. After all, I mean, the only Power Trip release I'm now missing is the Opening Fire compilation of unreleased tracks, and once I get that, I'll have everything Power Trip. But yeah, I got the debut, Manifest Decimation. After all, it was their first, and rest in peace, Riley Gale. I can't believe it's been over a year. Next up, we got an essential album that some people would think, how come you didn't have this in the collection already? It just kept going over my head when it comes to getting it, but I finally decided to get it now. Pantera, Vulgar Display of Power. I mean, it's a classic 1992 album. Songs like Mouth for War, Walk, Fucking Hostile, This Love, Hollow. I mean, it's just amazing. Pantera themselves are great, and this album's a great example of how good of songwriters they were back in their heyday here in the early 90s. And Phil's voice got more gritty on this album as well. I mean, what else can I say about it that hasn't been said already? Moving on to the next one. Now, this one, the version I have is a bit of an odd one because there's no identifier on it, and it's kind of got like a cheap cover, but it still works pretty well, and that's Overkill Taking Over. This, their second album, and it's one of the best thrash albums of the late 80s. Not the best Overkill album. To me, that's 2 albums later with the Years of Decay. But this might be my number 2 favorite. I mean, songs like Deny the Cross, Wrecking Crew, Fear His Name, In Union We Stand, Electro-Violence. I mean, this album, top to bottom, is just New York thrash metal glory right here. Now, the next 2 are from the same band as well. Next up, son of a bitch, I dropped. Don't you just hate it whenever you get so excited and you end up dropping shit? But, you know what, I'll just leave that in, I don't care. The more funny, I guess. But, anyway, so next up we got some Obscura, and I got the debut album, Retribution. I came across this album. I mean, I knew about this album, but I never listened to it until just a few nights ago. I was just scouring YouTube and decided, you know what, let's check out Retribution by Obscura and see what it's about. And wowee, does this not sound like their other albums. This is probably the heaviest Obscura album that I've heard. I mean, the tone in the vocals, it goes everywhere from traditional death metal to that prog style to tech death and even a little black metal at times with the certain beats and vocal styles. But yeah, and this version comes with 3 cover songs. The cover of Lack of Comprehension by Death, the cover of Synthetically Revived by Suffocation, and God of Emptiness by Morbid Angel. And they're all really good covers, though they don't hold akin to the original, but it doesn't matter. But the original material, top to bottom, it's fantastic death metal from Germany. So there's Obscura Retribution. Let me double check, make sure I didn't fuck up this one. Nope, it's pretty good. Yeah, I went to pick it up and it slipped out of my fingers and fell to the ground. But anyways, and then we got their second album, Cosmogenesis. Now, I listened to quite a bit of this album a long time ago. I mean, songs like Anti-Cosmic Overload, the title track, Centric Flow. I mean, this This was definitely when the prog tech death sound really started to shine through for Obscura to where they are now, and hell, they got a new album coming soon, and I'll probably review it whenever it comes, but yeah, Cosmogenesis by Obscura, and I need some water. Anyways, though, moving on to another album some people were shocked that I didn't have in the collection already. It's another case of just constantly forgetting about it until now, and that is Motorhead Ace of Spades. It's insane to think that this whole lineup of Lemmy, Filthy Phil, and Fast Eddie are no longer with us. May they rest in peace, God rest their souls. But I mean, this is a 1980 classic. I mean, the title track, even if you're not a metal fan, you should know the song Ace of Spades. If not, get out. I mean, and other songs like Love Me Like a Reptile, We Are the Road Crew, Jailbait. My personal favorite off the album, The Chase is Better Than the Catch. Just an amazing song, and Lemmy crooning even at one point towards the end. But yeah, fucking all-time classic right there. Now this next one, I was shocked to have found at a cheap price on eBay, but I managed to get it, and this was the original release from 1992. We have Monstrosities' Imperial Doom. Yeah, for those who don't know Monstrosity, they're a death metal band from the famous Florida scene. And this album right here was the first of two albums with George Corpse Grinder Fisher, who would have eventually joined Cannibal Corpse. This was where he kind of cut his teeth. And man, this is some underrated death metal. Songs like the title track, Ceremonial Void, Final Cremation, Horror Infinity. This was almost like a precursor to more of the tech death stuff that started to come around about this time. Yeah, you had Atheist, and you had Death, and you had Cynic, and Suffocation at the time going strong with the tech death stuff. This is kind of like the precursor to what tech death would eventually become in the mid-90s right here, because there are some techie parts on this album. And now moving on to a live album, and that's one of the best live albums, and yeah, Mayhem live in Leipzig, 1990, when they were in Leipzig, East Germany, where you have Dead in the band at the time, and this is like one of only 3 major releases that Dead was on. Another live album, and then the Dawn of the Black Hearts bootleg. But this was the superior of the 3. I mean, it's the most famous of the 3 as well, as this was released after Dead's suicide in 1991. This version came out on Peaceville in 93, so they did a really good job at re-releasing this. And it's fucking amazing Norwegian black metal. What more can you say about Mayhem? Without trying to go into the controversial realm. Alright, so the next 2 albums are from the same band. First up, from Mastodon, we got Emperor of Sand. This came out in 2017, and I'll be honest, I kind of slept on this album a little bit when it initially came out. But after going back and listening to it afterwards, this is a fucking great album. Not the best Mastodon album, but it's a great one nonetheless. I mean, songs like Sultan's Curse, Steam Breather, Scorpion Breath, and especially the closer, Jaguar God, was one of the best Mastodon songs I had ever heard. Which brings us to their most recent release that came out this past Friday, and I will do a review of this weekend after I get a chance to listen to it, and that's the new double album, Hushed and Grim. And I can't wait to give this a listen. Because I've already heard from so many people that this is the best album since Crack the Sky. So I can't wait to give it a listen eventually. Another case of 2 albums from the same band up next, and it's Creator Time. First we got their underrated debut, Endless Pain. Now this is very different from the rest of the Creator discography. This is a more blackened thrash. Like, they were really into bands like Bathory and Venom at this time. and they kind of wanted to incorporate that into their already thrash metal sound. And this to Pleasure to Kill is like night and day in terms of production and songwriting. This being more blackened thrash, and then Pleasure to Kill you could argue is like death thrash to some extent. But yeah, this is a great album. I mean, songs like Total Death, Storm of the Beast, Flag of Hate, Tormentor. And I love how every other song, it's either Vintor, the drummer, singing, or Mila Petroza singing. Two completely different styles of vocals, yet they work so well. Which brings us to their third album, Terrible Certainty. Now this version's especially significant because this is the 2017 remastered edition that also comes with the Out of the Dark and Into the Light EP, which had 2 original songs and 6 live tracks. So yeah, this is a cool double disc set right here of a full length and an EP that came out in 87, 88 in that time frame. Kind of an underrated, unsung hero in the Creator discography, I think. Because when you talk about early Creator, people always talk about Pleasure to Kill, Extreme Aggression, and Coma of Souls. Yet albums like these two don't get brought up in the same breath, which is kind of unfortunate because they're, I think, just as good. Just very, very different styles, I feel like. Next up, we get to another album that I am so happy I finally got in the collection, and that is Incantation, Onward to Golgotha. Very raw, very gross, very cavernous debut from one of the pioneers of what you would call cavernous death metal, because it just sounds so gross. You know, there's some doomy moments, there's some almost technical parts, even though it's not really technical. More black metal, honestly. But yeah, this is fantastic stuff. 1992, Relapse Records. Amazing shit. Speaking of amazing shit, next up we get into Immortals, At the Heart of Winter. Some people argue this is the best Immortal album. I'd say it's up there. For me, Sons of Northern Darkness will always reign supreme, but yeah, At the Heart of Winter is no slouch at all. I mean, only 6 songs, but every single track packs a punch. Plus, who doesn't love Abbott? Moving on, now these next 3 are going to be from the same band. After I got their most recent album, The Affair of the Poisons, and then having James McBain on the Horseman podcast recently, I decided to go out and buy the rest of the Hellripper discography. So starting off, we got the debut album, Coagulating Darkness. This is a very raw debut from James. I mean, blackened speed, thrash, whatever you want to call it. First wave black metal, proto black metal. It's absolutely incredible, and James, he's become a good friend, and I wanted to support him in every way I could with getting this as well as these 2. First, the Complete and Total Fucking Mayhem compilation that eventually was re-released by Reaper Metal Productions, featuring their first EP and all the songs that Hellripper has done in split albums, all mashed together into this, which is awesome in itself. And then another release from Reaper Metal Productions, and that's the latest EP from 2019, Black Arts and Alchemy. Absolutely fantastic as well. All Hail the Goat being my favorite. And even the cover of Ironheads by Running Wild is fantastic. Next up, we got a very divisive album in the world of death metal, because some people didn't like the direction that the band was going to. At the time, I was just checking something there. But Entombed, Wolverine Blues. I mean, yeah, this pioneered the death and roll style, but to me, Entombed's the only band that can pull that style off really well. After all, they created it, essentially. And yeah, and this was a very well-received album at the time in 93. And nowadays, especially like the death metal diehards, kind of look at this as like, oh, Entombed, they sucked after Clandestine. I disagree. I think this is fantastic in its own right. It's just different than Left Hand Path and Clandestine, but it's whatever. But Wolverine Blues. Rest in peace, LG Petrov. Next up, another classic that some people are probably going to be shocked I didn't have in the collection until now. Danzig's debut album, Danzig. I mean, what more can I say about this album that has been said already? I mean, it's Danzig's metal debut after being in punk for so long, and he loved metal, so he's like, you know what, I'm going to make a metal band. Blues metal? But it kicks fucking ass. Next up, we get to my favorite traditional death metal album that came out last year, and that is Where Death Lies by Carnation. Carnation being a Belgian death metal band that kind of helps bring back the Swedish death metal HM2 sound, but in a different country, and kind of mixes it with a little bit of Cannibal Corpse. But I absolutely love Carnation. I need to get their debut Chapel of Abhorrence at some point, and I'll have both Carnation albums. We're almost there. We're getting to the bottom of the stack. Next up, we've got another classic some people are shocked I didn't have until now, and that's Candlemass Nightfall. The amazing sophomore effort from the Swedish doom metal masters. I mean, this album's just packed full of amazing tracks like Well of Souls, At the Gallows End, Samaritan, Mourners, Lament, Bewitched. You are bewitched. I can't do it right now, but fucking amazing 1987 classic. Speaking of classics, we got another Earache re-release that came out just this year. And this is essential for any fan of grindcore, and I talked about this during the Horseman Podcast Grindcore Albums episode. Brutal Truth, Extreme Conditions Demand Extreme Responses. I mean, definitely more death grind than traditional grindcore, but it's still an amazing album, and that's all that I need to say about this. Bringing me to another Earache Records release, and this is actually an original release from '94, and that's Bolt Thrower for Victory. Been needing to get more Bolt Throwers since prior to this I only had the Fourth Crusade, but I now have the follow-up for Victory, and this is often considered one of the 3 or even 4 best Bolt Thrower albums in their entire discography. Need to get the rest of their albums to complete a legacy of death metal. And this album, I mean, songs like the title track, Remembrance, Lest We Forget. Now, the next 2 are going to be from the same band again, so let's get through them. So next up, we got Bloodbath. We have Nightmares Made Flesh. Yeah, this was the one where Peter Tägtgren from Hypocrisy came in to do vocals after Michael Åkerfeldt left for a while. But this is a fantastic album. Arguably, and I say arguably, the best death metal album of the 2000s. Because, man, this album's just filled with awesomeness. Cancer of the Soul, Brave New Hell, Soul Evisceration, Eton. It's just fucking modern death metal classic. Which brings us to the live album, The Vocan Carnage. This was released in 2008, but the show was in 2005 when Bloodbath played Vocan. And what a lineup you had for Bloodbath at the time. Michael Åkerfeldt on vocals, Dan Swano and Anders Neustrom on guitars, Jonas Rinsky from Catatonia on bass, and Martin Axelrod on drums. Fucking amazing lineup, and they put on a hell of a show with this CD, DVD combo. All mine for the taking. So now I have the classic Bloodbath collection all set. We got 4 more to go. Next up, we got a recent release from the best death metal band from Norway, Blood Red Throne, from 2016, The Union of Flesh and Machine. I listened to this album top to bottom a little while back. Absolutely loved it. Once I saw it at one of the record shops I was at, I'm like, gotta have it. And here it sits in my hand. Really cool cover of Judas Priest, Leather Rebel. They definitely did it in their own fashion, and it worked. Trying to fix the stack. Next up, I have the latest release that came out in 2019 from modern cosmic death metal masters Blood Incantation, Hidden History of the Human Race. Some of you guys who know me know that I love the band Time Ghoul, and how I wish they were still going to this day. I feel like the best continuation of what they did is through Blood Incantation. You know, that sci-fi, death metal, techy, proggy, doomy at times, trippy. And this is definitely a continuation of what Time Ghoul was doing. Mix in with like Morbid Angel and Demolich and some Atheist and Nile kind of thrown in there. And this is an awesome album. I need to get the debut EP, that Interstellar Extinction, or Interdimensional Extinction EP, and then I'd have all the releases from Blood Incantation. Next up, we get my number 2 album from 2020, Black Crown Initiates, Violent Portraits of Doomed Escape. I need to get the other Black Crown albums, like Wreckage of Stars and Selves We Cannot Forgive, and I'd have all 3 Black Crown Initiate albums. This is just amazing progressive death metal. I mean, it harkens back to like Edge of Sanity, Opeth, even some elements of Cynic, and early Decapitated even at times. And yeah, this is just a fantastic prog death metal album. And speaking of prog death, or within that realm, the final album is both the full-length and the single EP from Amorphous, Tales from the Thousand Lakes. Their sophomore effort from '94. This was when they kind of were an amalgamation of prog, melodic death metal, and death doom. And this is just absolutely glorious. Songs like First Doom and Black Winter Day, in which Black Winter Day is one of the best prog metal songs of all time. I mean, top to bottom, it's just a masterpiece of all things metal. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of this crazy big CD collection update. I want to know from you guys, what's your favorite album out of everything that I've shown off here tonight? And just a reminder, this might be the last update you're going to see for quite a while, because I started to save enough money for Christmas presents, but after Christmas, I'm going to go insane again. Okay, maybe not this insane, but just going back to getting into a steady flow of getting stuff. But anyways, thank you guys for watching, horns high, and I will see you soon. I don't want to do this, but I have no other option.
No! Please! Is it what
I feel like I'm about to commit the biggest genocide of all time on this show.
Wait,
My number 7.
Do it.
My number 7. Behemoth the Satanist.
No! 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 Are you serious?
And now Hannah's going to hide in the shadows.
Damn you!
Everybody.
Why?
Die.
Why?